Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Grow Wealthy Grooming. For those of you guys that are here for the very first time, welcome. My name is River Lee, and I am the founder of the Savvy Groomer, where we teach you to go from being burnt out, broken to healthy, wealthy, and happy, building a grooming business on your terms. So, not thrilled about my setup right now. I look so old in this lighting. It's really unflattering, but we're going to make it work. I feel like I look exactly like my grandmother, which is, it's not bad. It's not good. It's just one of those things, right? And especially right before the holidays, I feel like we all are sensitive to different things. So this is where I came up with today's topic. I did not want to sit there and really dive deep into business. I don't think any of us are in the mood for it. It's right before, Christmas, if you guys are Christmas, or right after Hanukkah, if you guys are Jewish. Alan saying your grandmother's hot. Well, yes, she is. She's a very beautiful woman. So let's go ahead and start talking about today's topic. So today I want to talk about how childhood wounds affect business. Now again, it sounds really corny, but I was reading this LinkedIn article recently and I thought, wow, this is me. All of this stuff was just me over and over and over again. And the article talked about, and if you guys want the link, I can put the link down below. But I just found it really, really fascinating. And I was going to put it up there, but the internet is not cooperating. So here are 5 glaring signs that you've experienced childhood, basically wounds. One is you're scared to speak up, to advocate, or defend yourself. And when I think about groomers, I think about how we're afraid to advocate for ourselves. We're afraid to tell people our new price. We're afraid to do all of these things, enforce our policies, right? We're afraid they're going to get angry, or we're afraid they're going to leave us. And for a lot of us, that is a childhood wound. That is somebody taught us to not advocate for ourselves or not to defend ourselves. And unfortunately, I see this over and over and over again. One of the most important components of my price increase masterclass is all about how we need to really become the advocates for ourselves and use numbers, not feelings, to decide what our pricing should be. Okay. And then number 2 is you don't experience yourself as a person of worth or value. So again, I really hate the phrase in the grooming industry, charge what you're worth. I think it's kind of a toxic thing to say. But if you listen to groomers on why we should charge this or we should charge that, it's all based on their skill set, right? It's not about, I deserve a livable wage. My employees deserve a livable wage. It's all about my skill set. I offer this. And obviously, we do need to make sure that you are creating a product or service that people want to buy. We want to make sure that you are creating that scenario, of course. But let's be real here. How many times have you seen someone say, you know what, I just have to make a livable wage? Unless if it is, I deserve this because I'm worth it. But, what is that intrinsic value? A lot of times I'll hear people say something along the lines of, I'll be able to charge more when I become certified, or I'll be able to charge more when we get the bigger facility or when I get the brand new mobile. It's like, okay, but do you not deserve to be comfortable? Right? Do you not deserve to live there? And I'm really sorry. I'm in my jammies. Not even going to lie. It's cold and I'm tired. It's been a long day, but it's been a great day. I've been grooming all week in the cat van. and I love it, but I'm exhausted. I have coffee. Well, I should say an espresso mixture in my cup. And I'm loving it. So let's go through this. Number 3, you're highly defensive and reactive, and you can't respond with calm. You can't respond calmly and with a little bit of, I don't want to say dignity. That's not fair. On the flip side, right, you either have the groomer who won't defend themselves at all, right? And when they finally do defend themselves, what do? They start flipping out on their customers. They're nasty. They're rude. They're downright mean, right? And it's almost like this overcorrection. So we have somebody who's like, okay, I'm going to go from being really kind, almost this doormat, and now I'm going to be angry and venomous. So there's, of course, something in the middle. But I find that these are the two most common things that groomers do, right? And there's a big difference, and it was explaining reacting versus responding. When someone tells me, $600 for price increase masterclass is too much money, I don't engage with that, Or if I do, I will ask them, I said, okay, well, what do you think is a fair price? Because I asked them to think about it. What do they feel like that it's valued at? And if they say like $20, that's when I explain, well, it's 6 hours of coaching content, right? It's 6 hours of workshops. And that's a lot, right? That's a lot of content. So, that's very different than go F yourself. If you don't like the price, you go to hell, No, and I need to do that. Because if they don't want to buy my product, then that's okay. And the same thing with grooming. I've been in a cat van all week, and their grooming prices start at $100 for a cat. I mean, some people are paying $180 for a cat client. And if somebody is like, oh, it's very expensive, then, you can have that conversation, right? Because a lot of times it's not that they can't afford it or it's expensive. It's that it's more than they thought it would be, or it's just not in their budget. And that's okay. Erin's saying I struggle with this still. Absolutely. And this is signs of a childhood wound. Now, this doesn't mean that your parents are bad. This doesn't mean that anyone did anything wrong. I know there were things, in retrospect, my son is 10, that I should have done better. But I didn't have the skill set to help him out, right? I would be a better mother today when he was little because I know more and I'm older than I did then. There's just always more research. So when we want to look at how we were affected as a child, we need to then go, okay, when else do I act like this in my personal life? Things like accommodating versus actually being real. How many times do we overpromise? We don't want to tell that client, we're going to shave your dog. And instead what they tell them is, we're going to do our best. I was far more snarky when I owned my grooming salon. And if somebody said, save as much as you can, and they would have like a pelted dog, I'd be like, what, in a bag? Because, and I would tell them, I'm like, no, he's going to be Mr. Clean Bald. And so what would happen is if he came back with even a little bit of hair, they were happy. Versus if we promised them, I'll save as much as I can, because we want to be accommodating. We want to be that appeasing child. Then when that dog comes back in a 4 and we're really proud of ourselves, they see that as if we had shaved with a 30, right? Another one is complaining versus requesting. I love you. I love you all. Most of my listeners are not this person, But there is definitely a problem in our grooming industry with people just complaining about situations versus asking their clients, right? A lot of people say, my clients won't pay that, right? And I'll be like, okay, well, have you asked them to pay that? And they're like, no, but they won't. I'm like, okay, well, ask the clients you don't like if they will pay that first, right? And of course, we do strategies. We do so many things like that. In my coaching, a lot of times, I will get so much pushback. And it's this complaining instead of actually going through with it. It's okay, well, let's actually request what you want. But it's this avoidance tactic of I'll just complain because I don't want to confront. Compromising integrity versus leading with truth. I see this in the grooming industry when instead of shaving a matted dog or shaving a matted cat, we try to save the coat. I'm sorry if they neglected their pet, did not brush it, and I don't expect my customers to brush their pets, and I'll tell you why. Because, let's just say when I was in my shop and when I was in my mobile. Because it's like promising your dentist you're not going to eat candy. I would rather them be real with me and tell me the truth, and let's create a plan based on the truth versus me having to compromise my integrity. So a lot of us would rather, again, be that appeasing child and try to save a dog versus hand them back a bald dog or cat. Cat, I feel like it's easier because you're like, listen, I'm not dematting this cat. I don't want to die. Number 4, you've internalized the narcissism or emotional manipulation of your parents or other authority figures in your life and potentially demonstrate some narcissistic traits. Now, I did say what are common things of a narcissistic personality. Now, I'm not saying you guys are narcissistic, but and I love reading these articles because they're so eye-opening. Here's examples of a narcissistic personality. Has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without actually having the achievements. And so you have groomers that are like, I'm a worm, I'm worthless, like I'm not this person. And then you have some groomers, their business is shit. Like their business is awful. They're not good groomers. They have a terrible personality. Their shop is garbage. And they think they deserve $200 an hour. So we do have groomers like that, guys. And maybe they're not a narcissist, but they have this inflated sense of ego. They have this inflated sense of importance. Like, again, going from I deserve a livable wage is very different than I'm here, so I deserve 50%. I don't know why I deserve 50%, but I deserve 50% commission, right? 2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. That sounds a lot like you guys when you're planning these big, giant businesses. I want to own 10 grooming salons with daycare and boarding and grooming. And I go, okay, well, tell me the reality version of that. How are you going to get $1 million to open this facility? Do you even want these? Or is it just this, again, grandiose, egoic plan, this fantasy? And that's very different. There's a big difference between daydreaming and fantasizing in unhealthy ways, right? And a lot of you guys, when you're talking about this future business you want to run a business where your employees will magically take care of themselves and I never have to be there and I'm just going to replace me and I'm going to pay them $15 an hour and I'm going to have 30 of these salons. Like, it's complete fantasy, right? Complete fantasy. Requires excessive admiration. This may manifest different in groomers than people think. We really love when our customers hero worship us. When we save that dog's coat, we feel like a hero. We need to, a lot of groomers, so when I teach how to run a grooming salon, I do not want the groomer to be the one to check in and out the dog. What I want is a receptionist to check in and out the dog. And a groomer will often tell you, I don't want there to be any kind of communication error. And then I'll say, okay, but don't you write down the notes for next time? And they're like, well, yeah. And I said, okay, so if you write down the notes, then communication should not be a problem, right? But what it really comes down is they want that gratification of that relationship. They want that owner to make them feel important. And there's nothing wrong with that when done correctly. But a lot of times it's just in a very toxic ways. Believes he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should be associated with other special and high status people. So I'm going to use this in a way that I definitely have this tendency, not so much of like this really high status, but I often feel like the only kind of people I can be friends with, the only kind of people that can understand me are other groomers. I really struggle with making friends outside of the grooming industry. Do I make them? Yes. But are they significantly harder? Yes. Because I really feel like I will never be understood by anyone but a groomer. And it's such a weird tendency, right? Because some of it's true. Some of it's like, no one's going to understand what it's like to have anal glands in their hair but a groomer. But there's so many instances where we self-isolate as an industry, right? You could have someone buy a grooming business and they have done, like they will work alongside of us, right? They're not a groomer, but they will bathe with us. They will blow dry with us. They will always help it around us. They will never be our equal unless if they have been a groomer before. And that's a weird, potentially narcissistic tendency in this industry. Hey, Edie, great to see you. One is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. Not so much intentional, but we've all done this, right? We've all had our bather or our employee do the dog that we don't want to do. A lot of times the reason that we are hiring that groomer or hiring that bather or hiring that receptionist is to do shit we don't want to do, right? It's like, we won't do it, so we want our bather to do it. I'll say all the time to groomers, like, they'll be like, I don't want to groom cats, so I'm going to hire someone. Right? And I'll be like, okay, well, do you want to groom cats? And they're like, hell no, I would never groom cats. Cats are the terrible. Da, 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 da. I'm like, okay, well, then why are we hiring someone to do a service that you don't want to do? And if they leave, they can't do. Right? Hey, Candace. Great to see you, girly. So, and I see a lot of grooming businesses, grooming salons built on the idea of, instead of creating a team and a long-lasting business, it's like, I don't want to groom, so I'm going to exploit somebody else so they can groom until their bodies don't work. I can't groom forever, so I have to have someone groom. And I'm like, okay, well, how long have you been grooming? They'll be like 10 years. I'm like, okay, if they've been grooming 10 years, so you expect them to work for you for 10 years, and then what? And they're like, oh, well, I expect them to groom for 30 years. I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that way, does it? Another one is envious of others, believes that others are envious of him or her. Yeah, lots of groomers, yo. They do not, how do I say this in the nicest of ways, guys? Guys, being nice is not my forte. I also love grooming cats, MLWJ. That's all I was doing all week, not all week. But I was in the cat van, and I love it. I had so much fun playing with the cats and grooming the cats. So, again, a lot of groomers would be like, oh, so-and-so does this. Yes, Peter, please, everyone, if you don't mind, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. It really does help my channel. So a lot of groomers will just sit there and like, they're just mean bitches. They're like, oh, that salon, they think they're so good. They charge this amount of money. Who can afford that? I would never make my clients pay that kind of money. That's highway robbery. That's price gouging. That's this, that's that. I mean, it's like high school envy, right? Another one is lacks empathy, is unwilling or to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others. Most groomers are incredibly empathetic until they're not. I find a lot of power groomers tend to lack empathy. They'll be like, well, I can groom 10 pets. Why can't my brand new baby groomer? Like, because your groomer's been grooming less than a year. Or they'll hire somebody and they're like, why can't they do everything I do? And I'm like, that's because if they could do what you do, they would open their own business, right? On the flip side, you have employees that are like, I want 50%. And when we're like, well, in order to keep the business open, we need to keep all payroll under 30%. And they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go work somewhere else. And that definitely lacks empathy, right? So there's all these different ways that, and this was just in this article. The last way, the fifth way, says you don't believe you have what it takes to make true positive change in your life. And this hit me hard, guys. Partly because I see so many groomers who are ready for change, but it's like I can give you guys all the tools. I can give you all the knowledge. I can give you hundreds and hundreds of hours of free shit and hours of paid stuff. But it's up to you to do the work, and it's up to you to actually do it. And one trick I will say in one-on-one coaching is like, okay, let's close our eyes and picture ourselves in a year. Let's say in that year, you have not implemented what you have decided you need to implement. Think, okay, now picture 5 years and you have not implemented what we need to implement. Let's think of 10 years and we have not implemented what we need to implement. Right? 10 years is a lot of years, guys. We overestimate what we can do in 1 year and we underestimate what we can do in 10. If you had told River Lee that in 10 years, she was going to open and sell 2 grooming businesses and become an international business coach, I would have told you were on crack. I've been like, there is no way I could do all of that in 10 years. And yet here I am. I went from being pregnant, living in my car, to being here. And it's amazing, guys. But what we need to do is actually believe it. And when we believe it, we put our feet into action. Now, don't get me wrong. And this is one of the biggest things, right? So all these childhood wounds are affecting your business because they make you go back to whatever your habit was as a little kid. And I want you guys, you're going to be triggered. If you have a family that's anything like mine, you're going to be triggered. I'm planning on going to Florida for Christmas and New Year's because I put me first. I know that sounds super selfish, but my emotional well-being is so much more important to me than I ever realized. Because when I'm okay and when I'm good, I'm a better parent. I'm a better business coach. I'm a better person. My sister is going to be a mom. She's due on the 20th of January, but that baby is coming in hot, and I think about her and I think about everything that she's going to have to go through, and her pregnancy is triggering me because she is going to be a single mom, and that's so hard for me to watch someone make the same mistakes I made. Not that my son was a mistake, but if there was any way that I could have protected her from doing that, it would have, but I can't. And that's very hard because my role in the family when I was growing up was the reality and the person, like everyone would ignore the elephant in the room, whatever the elephant in the room was. And my job was to say, hey, there's an elephant. Does anyone else see this elephant? Because it's here. It's here. And then my job in my family when I was growing up is to figure out how to get the elephant out. Melissa was saying 10 years goes quick, a decade. Absolutely. You don't realize that. But as you get older, you recognize it. Because 10 years seems to go really quickly the older you get. But so for my family, like I have to go, okay, who am I in my family and what was my go-to feeling? And when I was a kid, my go-to feeling was anger, resentment, picking fights, arguing. Because if I was the good, nice girl, then everyone just lived in this other reality. Just sharing, guys. My dad was an alcoholic, and my brother to this day will not acknowledge that our father was an alcoholic. Nope, he just won't. My brother, if you talk to about our dad, he won't acknowledge it, and that's his journey, not mine. But there's a lot of wounds that come with that. There's lots of, why did my parent pick a substance over me, and the shame and the hiding, and learning how to deal with your own adult feelings around alcohol. And am I going to end up like my dad? And my dad died when he was 40. Ironically, the man died of mono. You would think he would have died of any other thing on the planet, but he died of mono. But I'm sure his immune system was just so compromised from drinking and everything. And the reason I share that is because when I talk to a lot of other people, when we have these childhood experiences that we're not perfect. My mom worked really, really hard. She had her own issues. The woman I grew up with doesn't exist. My mom is so amazing. Yeah, Melissa Hall saying, I love your mom. I love my mom too. But she has grown tremendously in the last 10 years. And I'm not talking bad about her. No different than I wouldn't talk bad about me. I think about who I was growing up, and I was a very angry kid. I had my own issues. Because of the things I went through. But like my mom is so wonderful and giving and supportive now. She wasn't when I was growing up, and she wasn't when she was young. Hurt people hurt people. And when I had my son, I lived in my car, and then I lived 6 months in my grooming salon. My mom had just gotten out of this really messed up relationship. She had dated a crackhead for like 10 years, and she just pretended like this man had never done drugs. And, and I don't blame her for that. That was a pattern. That was from her family's pattern. Her growing up, and again, I don't want to divulge those dynamics, but my grandparents had unideal dynamics. And then when my mom was 14, my Uncle Bobby died. So her brother died. And basically her whole family abandoned her and just pretended like he was still alive. And that's really tough. And then when you go from there to being a mom of 3 kids with a dad who works, my dad worked 80 hours a week. He worked 7 days a week. And if he took a day off, he was intoxicated. And I can't even imagine being in that position. And so when you think of that role she played and the role I had to play in my life, of course it affects my business, right? I think about how much validation I needed in my business when I had my shop, especially. I know my grandparents love me very, very much. But even now, they ask me when I'm going to get a real job. My mother bought my mobile grooming business. She makes more money running the mobile business than she does as a full-time teacher. They keep asking her, when is she going to just dump this? Because who would ever do this? And who would ever pay this? And they're just so unsupportive. And I think I have grown enough to step away from it. And I'm so proud of my mom because I can't imagine if that was my dad. You know, my dad had his own issues, but, you know, I can't imagine being a woman in her, I don't know if she's in her 50s or 60s. I don't even want to say that. I feel like I'm going to age my mom too much. But I can't imagine being a grown woman. You know, I'm a grown woman, but she's a grown-ass woman. And having my father, who I just want to be proud of me, telling me I'm a failure all the time. I can't imagine how and that does affect her business. But that's why I'm here, right? And then for her, you know, when I need that support, it's hard. She can't give me that support, right? I'm giving her that support. And that's a different dynamic. So that affects my business because I have to self-parent myself. Melissa was saying it's true. I'm an older mom now, and I'm not the same mom when my kids are 2 years old. Now they're in their 20s. Absolutely. You know, yeah, you know, and so for me in my business, you know, at this point doing coaching, if you think about this, if I have a mother who can't stand up to her father saying, when are you going to get a new real job? You know, you're going to be a failure. You're not going to be able to do this. If I need support, she can't give me support. She can't give me support. And she can barely stand up for herself against my grandparents, never mind standing up for me. So this affected my business in the beginning because when I had customers, especially when they'd be like, oh, does your mom own this place? Because I looked very young. And I would want them, again, that defensiveness, that overly angry defensive. No, I earned this. I deserve this. I do this. And it was so mad. And it was because I was taking out childhood wounds from wanting my mom to stand up for me and wanting my grandparents to see that I was successful, taking it out on customers. You know, and we do this, guys, and we don't mean to do it. You know, sometimes, you know, our parents told us we didn't deserve things, or other wounds around money. Maybe it was that, who do you think you are? You know, the Queen of England. You know, when you want something or you want some money or whatever. My dad used to tell me all the time when I was a little girl, you know, and this is not very nice, but he would tell me, you know, you got born to the wrong family. You know, we can't afford to keep you. You know, he was just really mean. And people that are hurt other people. So I grew up with a dad who was a drunk, a very functional drunk, but a drunk. And he was a very mean drunk. Never aggressive and never physically harmful. But he said really mean things. You know, he told my sister, I know this pregnancy is affecting her, because he told her the only thing she'd ever be good for is being pregnant and living off of a man. And I know that's, you know, absolutely devastated her. She never wanted to be a mom because of that. And again, how does that affect her business? Well, now that she is pregnant, now she doesn't own a business, she's an employee, but she doesn't want to celebrate her pregnancy. She doesn't want to tell anyone she's pregnant because she's afraid of being judged. And that's going to affect her work day, because instead of, telling clients, hey, I'm 9 months pregnant, she's trying to hide the fact. And that's not possible. But in her mind, she's going to do that. And for some of us that have had, pregnancy issues, I had a very traumatic pregnancy with my son because I didn't feel loved and supported by anyone. And then with my twin daughters that I lost at 20 weeks, there was a lot of trauma for me about fearful that she might get, if for those of you guys that don't know, I always assume people know. I was pregnant with twin daughters. We lost them at 20 weeks. My spouse left me. I went septic and I almost died. It was incredibly traumatic. And for me, I know my wounds are coming out because I'm fearful for her health. I'm fearful for the business, right? Because God forbid something happens to this baby or to her. I'm up right now staying at an Airbnb to support my family, to help support their business, and honestly, I don't mind grooming cats, so it's not a big deal. But it affects my business because that childhood wound where I'm the fixer, I'm the helper. Here I am leaving where I had just moved, South Carolina, and I'm up here to help cover some of her maternity leave, right? And that affects Savvy Groomer because, here I am trying to work out of an Airbnb instead of being home and stable and, in a place where, the lighting isn't crap and the internet isn't inconsistent. So we do this, and a lot of it is just acknowledging it, and then self-parenting. Self-parenting sounded like the biggest crock of shit I ever heard until I started doing it. It's been one of the best things I have ever done. So whenever I do something, let's say like today, I was trying to get the lighting right in here, and I was trying to get it cute in here, and there's just no way between getting the lighting, being near the internet, having my computer set up, all of it, there was just only so many options. And I was so mad and so frustrated. And what was going through my head is, see, you're a failure. See, you can't even do this right. Like, it was all these awful things that kept running through my head. And I had to take a step back and go, hey, right? Because unfortunately, I don't have my mom a little bit now, but I didn't have neither grandparents nor a parent to say, hey, kiddo, you're doing the best you can. And you know what? You're doing this. You're going to have a live show. Things happen. And if they can't accept it, and if they can't be happy that you're even here, well, they can go fuck themselves, right? That's what I need someone to say. And I don't really have anyone right now in my life. I don't have a husband to say that. I know if I asked my friends, they would say that. But, it's not really a conversation I want to have with my friends, right? Because I know they're, not placating me, but I know they're going to say that. So I have to start saying that to me. I have to say, hey, River, you're okay. And just talk to myself kindly. And for a lot of us, you can tell how many people have had healthy, really supportive childhoods by asking them, man, isn't the voice in your head nasty? And basically everyone I know goes, yes. And it's because the voice in our head is basically our parents. And the people I know that don't have that problem, they have amazing, lovely, healthy, supportive parents. And that's not many people I know. And I think it's because I don't attract those people. Because they don't need a lot of things I have to offer. You don't need help in their business the way that somebody who has been through trauma does. And I find most groomers have had trauma. When you pick pets over people, it's generally because you can't trust people. When you would rather take a dog who will bite you and poop on the table, or a cat that's going to try and piss in your face, over a person, it's because you don't trust people. And that's okay. It's okay. But we need to long-term start either acknowledging these wounds and going, okay, how is this affecting my business? Unintentionally affecting my business. And it doesn't mean you fix them today. I mean, I've been on a 3-year, I don't want to call it a spiritual journey, healing journey, working on myself. And it's not easy. And it's really hard to pick myself first. And there's all the guilt on every level. And I have to go, okay, if I had this perfect parent, and sometimes it's a perfect mom and sometimes it's a perfect dad. Like when I think about like a perfect mom, what I would want mom to say is, River, you have to put yourself first. Your mental health comes first. And then she would tell me, when the airplane is going down, the oxygen mask come down, you've got to put it on you first. Because if you're not okay, no one else is okay. Right? And on days when I feel like I'm going to die alone. And that's an irrational fear, right? But again, childhood wounds. My grandfather told me at 25 that I was getting old and he didn't want me to die alone. Now, that's because he was told, he got married at 18. He was basically told, this is what you do. He told my mother, basically, you get married and this is what you do. My grandparents have been married forever, and this is just what you do. So it's one of those things, like in a perfect world, that dad would be like, hey, don't worry about it. Mr. Right is coming and he's going to cherish you and he's going to love you. Well, that same dad who would tell you that about a boy would tell you that about a customer, right? And this is why I always talk about that soulmate client. If you had that dad who would say, you wait for the right man, he's going to come in, maybe not on a white horse, but he's going to be everything you ever dreamed of. That is the same dad that when you say, I want to fire this customer, and he would say, well, tell me why. And you would say how this customer is disrespectful and mean and awful. He would be like, you know what, sweetie? Here's what we do. We're going to write a script together. We're going to fire this client, and the right one is going to come along. And that's what a lot of us need, is those perfect parents that we didn't have. So we've got to create them and parent ourselves. And I do find that in a lot of my coaching, I have to, I don't want to say parent people, but I have to be that supportive voice. Because it's hard to believe in yourself. And it's not that you don't believe in yourself at all, but it's like there's only so far we can go. We believe we can be a success, but only a little bit of a success, right? Just enough. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the my TED Talk today. Today's topic was all about how childhood wounds affect business. And these are just examples. If you're triggered this holiday season, give yourself some grace, parent yourself, and then when you hear these wounds come up, think about how you are internalizing them and projecting them in your business. You're going to be so much happier. Once I realized that I didn't need the approval of my grooming clients, it was so much easier. I didn't need their validation. I needed my validation. I knew it was badass. I knew my dog grooms were okay. My cat grooms, pretty damn good. I didn't need that validation from them anymore. That validation I was seeking from them was validation I wanted from my family. And then once I didn't need the customer's validation anymore, that's when my mom paid attention and she saw someone she wanted to be. And that was really, really good for me. Yeah. Picture Perfect Groomer says, thank you, River. Oh, you're welcome, girl. Candace is saying, and awful clients for some reason. Right. A lot of us keep awful clients because that was our role as a kid. The peacekeeper, the pleaser, the accommodator. Right? It's almost like you feel like you deserve. Right? I don't know if your family did that at all. A lot of people's family told them they didn't feel like they could have that autonomy. And not to get too far down that rabbit hole, but if you guys have had any physical violations, and then it's very hard for people that have been through that kind of trauma to say no. Or on the flip side, they're very sensitive and say no to everything. It's not easy, guys. If you guys want to continue the conversation, you're welcome to join my free Facebook group, Savvy Pet Professionals. I hang out in there. We talk about personal finance, business, and lifestyle. It's a great place to be. I pop in there all the time. Always feel free to tag me if you're in that group, and I will always join the discussion as long as I am available. If you guys are if you want more one-on-one help, you can always sign up for a virtual coffee. It is a $25 fee. We take about 30 minutes to find out what you're looking to do. And I can let you know if I can help you, if there's something I can do for you. Sometimes it's just nice for you guys to hop on and we can help sort out what's going on. Now, it is a one-time courtesy. After that, it would be a coaching call. But a lot of times we can do quite a bit in 30 minutes. We can really dig deep and figure out what you need. If you haven't already, guys, please feel free to join my holiday challenge. It's a 2-week challenge from the 16th to the 31st. So if you're watching this now, you can join the last week of it. We're going to be doing, I don't want to give out any of the details because you know what? For those of you guys that are watching this later and you don't get to be a part of it, that's okay. You can check that out. Go to my Savvy Groomer Facebook page or my Savvy Groomer Instagram page. And all the details are there. All right, guys. So it's awesome talking to you. I hope you all have an awesome Christmas, Hanukkah. I think Hanukkah's over. New Year's. Yeah, I hope you guys are all enjoying it. I believe next Monday is... Let me double check. I don't want to promise anything. Yeah, so next week I will be here. So we're good. All right, guys. So I will see you next week. And as always, happy grooming, guys.